up, everybody? It's Aviation Hal. Tonight we're going to talk about fault lights and fault messages and how they differ across different airplanes. Right now I'm sitting on a Boeing 737, and this airplane uses what's called fault lights or fault legends, and this system is very simple, which is good because sometimes it could be really easy to troubleshoot that way. So let's kind of break it down. On the overhead we have these orange lights, and there's some blue ones in here as well, but let's focus on the orange ones for now. The orange lights are associated to a problem or a fault, as you would say. These lights in flight, all of these orange ones should be off. A dark cockpit kind of idea behind all of this. If a problem were to arise in flight, they would get a light on the overhead. They would also get one of these lights here. This is the master caution light. It's also a reset button. And then we have this master recall push button switch. We also call this a six-pack. And the reason we call it a six-pack is because it has 6 different fault legends on it. The FO also has his own set of fault legends on his. Each one of these lights are associated with a overhead section. So like we see here, we have a fuel fault light here. This has to do with any of these lights on this fuel panel here. In flight, they would have the fuel pumps on, and as you can see, we have a low pressure annunciation light right now. Well, the fuel pumps are turned off right now, so that's why the low pressure light's on. But if we turn these on, you'll see that the lights go out. The pressure switch makes, because the fuel pump creates pressure, it turns out the light. Now at any time in flight, if that pump were to lose pressure, that light would come on. And when this light comes on, they also would get a fuel warning annunciation right there. You can see it. So this would tell the pilot, hey, you need to look up at your panel. And he would go, oh, okay, I got low pressure lights, I need to do something about this. He can also cancel the message by hitting it, which gets it out of his field of view here. But if it's an actual fault, if it's a hard fault, these lights are going to stay on. Now there are a couple different systems over here that if you push the reset, the light up on top will go out if it's a what's called a single channel fault or a passive fault, but we're not going to get into any of that. Basically the idea here is I want to show you is that when these lights come on, there's going to be an issue. Part of some of their pre-departure checks is going to be to hit this master recall light. Now if there are any systems up here that had a passive fault that the light wasn't on just sitting here and they hit the recall light, they're looking for lights that come on and go back off as they cycle through this switch. And I tend to do this when I do my service check. When I come up here and I want to look at the different lights and the different systems that are on here, I will go through and hit this recall light and see if any other lights came on or went off as I cycled through all of these. Now right now, sitting at the gate, you can see that there's a bunch of lights on here, but all of these can be explained because of the condition that the airplane's in. Right now we have IDG drive lights right now because the engine's not turning and the IDG's not producing any power. We have, these are anti-ice legends for all of our different probes on the outside of the airplane. Those are on because the switch is off. If we turn the switch on, those lights go out. Same with hydraulic pumps, the doors here, we have a forward entry door message here because the forward door is open. Pretty simple. These blue lights are a little different. The blue lights are status lights. They're telling you the condition of something. So like right now, it's saying that the engine valve and the spar valve are closed. That's because the engine isn't on. So the spar valve is a fuel valve that delivers fuel to the engine. So that valve is closed because the engine's not running and it doesn't need fuel. These lights typically have 2 positions, not all of them, but they have 2. There's a bright and a dim. The bright you'll see here, is telling you that something's in motion or a disagree. A dim means that it's in a agreed state. So like right now, I have this crossfeed valve, I have it open. The valve says open, so the light is dim. If I turn it back to closed, the valve has to transition from from open to closed. So until it gets closed, it's going to be in what's called a disagree, because the valve is in transition from a open to closed. So you'll see that here. The light goes bright and then it goes out. When I open it, the inverse will happen. The light is bright and then it goes dim when the valve is open. So that's there's a couple of these blue lights across the panel. You'll see we have some for the ram air over there, and then these are for the spar valves. We have some for the generators here. But for the most part, all of these lights are going to be off. And if something comes up in flight, one of these lights are going to pop on with this associated master caution light. Like I said, over there you can see the FO has his own set. Down here we have these screens, and a lot of mechanics or a lot of people think that, oh, the faults are going to show up on my screen, so they're going to tell me that I have an issue. While most airplanes nowadays, that's how it works, like the Airbus, for example. Airbus, you pretty much watch these screens the whole time, and if anything happens, a fault legend's going to pop up on one of these screens. Well, the 37 is not like that. These screens are in place of old gauges that used to be in these positions. So these screens are just a fancier version of old gauges. So the only thing you're ever going to see on these pages, you're going to have, this is what's called the upper engine display. So you're just going to have engine information here. And then this lower display can switch between an engine page, which is the one that we have here, or it can cycle to a systems page. Now, this aircraft only has hydraulics on this page, but some 37s have different things here. But our software for these airplanes just has hydraulics. So we can go back to an engine page, but that's all you're going to get on these panels. I hope this kind of illustrated what I'm trying to talk about, but we'll look at some other airplanes and we'll see what you think. Alright, so now we're on a Boeing 717. And as you can see, it is kind of a similar setup here. We have 6 display screens again. We have our 2 flight displays. We have the nav display and the primary flight display. And then we have these 2 pages here. These 2 pages are similar to what we saw on the 737, except, as you can see down here, we have fault legends and these blue status messages. This display right here is called an EAD. These displays, engine annunciation displays. This one will always show your engine parameters, and this one right here, by cycling through these switches here, we can cycle through the different systems. So we can look at hydraulics and electrical and air, fuel. This is a configuration page, things like that. If something were to come up, most likely you're not going to see any fault legends on the overhead here. But for the most part, these lights up here aren't going to illuminate overhead. These are all just switches up here. If something happens, you're going to be looking at these pages here. Specifically, you're going to look at this status page right here. The status page is going to show you everything. It has a little area down here for maintenance issues, and any of the faults that are on all of the different pages are going to assemble here. Now we can, just like on the last airplane, those fault legends that were there, it's because the condition of the airplane. It's on the ground at the gate with everything turned off. So a lot of these faults are because of that. You'll also see, so let's go to the configuration page, because you can see under the configuration tab we have 2 little faults. You can see those faults come and they show up here as well. So if they're flying along and a fault pops up, the page that the fault happened on is going to pop up and it's going to show a fault right here. They can also go to the status page and it will show that fault as well. This is how the pilot is going to interact with the airplane, and this is how maintenance is going to help troubleshoot them, point them in the direction that they need to go. On top of that, we also have these computers here. These are called the MCDUs, or multi-function display units. Anyway, they're computers that interact with all the different systems on here. So we can go to different subsettings in here, or subsystems in here, and we can go through and bite, and we can get fault history, and we can do a lot of stuff. This is actually a really useful tool for maintenance. We can see door positions or sensor readouts, we can see fault legends, all those kind of things. We can do a lot of troubleshooting straight from the cockpit. And this is how most airplanes are set up now. Airbus is very similar to this as far as screens showing faults. Anyway, I hope this kind of sums it up. Till next time. See you later. Hey, you made it this far in the episode. You might as well consider hitting that like button. Maybe even comment. And if you were a really cool person, you'd even subscribe. Not telling you what to do, just a mild suggestion.